For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Barisi, earlier this week, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee gave an important speech where he talked about extremist groups, terrorist groups are trying to exploit the refugee program. So, like Mr. Russell just a few minutes ago, I would like to see if you can give us some numbers, just so this committee and the American people have this information. How many Syrian refugees have entered the United States in the last year?
Sir, I didn't bring any of the refugee numbers with me because I was prepared to talk about visa waiver, but I can certainly have us send that to you.
Do you know how many Americans have traveled to Syria in the last year?
I don't have that number on me either.
So you wouldn't know how many Americans have traveled and then returned?
I don't have that number on me.
How many visa waiver program overstays are there currently in the United States?
Sir, I didn't bring that number with me.
Ms. Barisi, when I look at the witness list, you got the longest title. Deputy Assistant Secretary, Screening Coordination, Office of Policy, Department of Homeland Security. You got the longest title, and it says Screening Coordination. Now, what is that? What screening are you coordinating? Is that just intra-agency or is that inter-agency?
It's both.
It's both, so it's all that.
DHS, I could coordinate across DHS components.
And the two biggest issues right now that we're dealing with, we had these terrible tragedies, terrible terrorist attacks, and we're talking about the refugee issue and the visa waiver program issue, and you can't give us any numbers on either program?
So I came prepared to talk about the visa waiver program.
And I just asked you how many visa waiver program overstays are there, and you said you don't know.
Sir, I don't have a number. Visa waiver program.
So when I ask you how many visa overstays of the visa waiver program may have traveled to Syria before they got here, do you know that number?
Sir, if visa waiver program national has a citizen of a visa waiver program country rather has traveled to Syria, Iraq, or a conflict zone, and they're considered a foreign fighter, that VWP
I'm not asking that. I'm saying someone from Great Britain. Someone from Great Britain comes to the United States on a visa waiver program, and they're now on overstay. Do we know if that person who's here today, maybe they're not even an overstay, do we know if that person has been to Syria before they came to the United States? Do we know that? I mean, I know this is what our bill that we just passed earlier this week is trying to get to. I'm asking, do we know that fact or that information now?
So that's why we have the IC involved, and there's an intelligence assessments, and we use.
I wasn't asking that. Do we know that? Do you know the number?
I don't know the number, but that's why I'm trying to.
But do we have people who are in that category I just described? Come from a visa waiver program country, may have traveled, they're here today, and may have been in Syria or Iraq or somewhere there in the last, before they came here. Do we know that?
If a citizen of a VWP country has traveled to one of those areas, there's a nexus to the United States, or the VWP partners shared that information with us, yes, we know that information, and we will vet against it. We will also use our algorithms.
But could they be here right now? Could they be here right now is my question.
I don't have that answer, sir.
All right, well, how about, can you tell me anything about the no-fly list then? You can't tell me anything about those. How does a person get put on the criteria for that? Can you tell me anything about that?
Sure. The no-fly list is a subset of the overall terrorist screening database. The interagency works together. The terrorist screening database is owned and operated by the Terrorist Screening Center, as I said earlier. There are criteria to get on that are.
How many American citizens are on that list right now? Can you give me that number? How many American citizens are on the no-fly list right now?
I know there are American citizens on the list. It is an extremely small number, but I don't have my numbers with me. But again, that's something I can easily get back to you.
Ms. Barisi, I've asked you the number of Americans who've traveled to Syria, you don't know. The number of Americans who may have traveled and returned, you don't know. The number of Syrian refugees who've entered the country in the last year, you don't know. The number of visa waiver program overstays, you don't know. The number of visa waiver overstays who may have been to Syria before they came here, you don't know, and the number of American citizens on the no-fly list, and you don't know, and yet you are the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Screening Coordination, Office of Policy, Department of Homeland Security in front of the Oversight Committee, and you can't give us one single number to some, I think, pretty basic questions?
Some of those statistics aren't held by DHS, and so that's why I would like to work with my interagency.
That's
partner to
why,
get you
that's
the
why I
correct
referenced your
information.
title. You're the one who's the screening coordinator for all this, and you said you were interagency. That's why I referenced your title. Seems to me you should, when you
I'm
come in
not,
front of this
I'm a
committee, you should have that
DHS
information.
employee. I'm a DHS career civil servant employee, and I will work with my interagency partners, but they're
You could
the
get us-
authoritative source for a lot of those numbers that you
If
mentioned.
you could get us those numbers and the ones Mr. Russell asked for, that would be very helpful. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.